Welcome to Joyfully Unstoppable, the podcast for women who are ready to succeed without the stress. Whether you're leading a team, a classroom, a boardroom, or your own big, beautiful life, I am so glad you found us. I'm your host, Becky Hamm, executive coach, speaker, and founder of Women Lead Well. Join me each week for straight talk, practical tips, and a dash of encouragement. Hello, friend. I hope you are having a great day. Oh, we are in the throes of summer. August is Augusting, but I love it. It's my birthday month, and so I love August. I hope you guys are having a great day. Today on the pod, we are going to talk about something that isn't covered very often, I think, in leadership development, but is critical. And I tell you, I have mentioned on this podcast many, many times the Women's Executive Leadership Lab. It is my membership program for directors, VPs, C-suite women, and I love it. It is so much fun. We do group coaching twice a month where all the women come together and they bring their challenges, whatever it is that they are dealing with at the moment, and we workshop those challenges. We share best practices. Everyone there is at a certain level of leadership, but I've got women from all different industries inside the membership. And so we have this phenomenal private space where women are able to be vulnerable about what they're dealing with at senior level, executive level leadership, and get the feedback and support from other women who know exactly what they're going through. And we have had many conversations inside the Women's Executive Leadership Lab about leading up. These members know how to lead teams. I spend time helping them optimize their leadership of their teams because there's still friction, there are points, there are areas where they can refine. Executive level leadership is different from more junior levels of leadership. And so helping them dial in on how to be effective executive level leaders is something we absolutely do within the program. But this challenge of leading up, especially when you're more senior, and leading up might mean managing someone at the C-suite level, managing board members. That is a more delicate, nuanced conversation. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Because your boss or your board, whoever that might be, they control resources, they evaluate your performance, and they have the authority to accept or reject your ideas. They also rely on you to surface information that they can't see, identify risks, and help them make sound judgments. When I say lead up, that's what I'm talking about. And so today, I'm going to share 4 practices that will help you lead up so your boss or your leadership will understand your perspective, recognize the value of your judgment, and listen when you have something important to say. And now the first step is to understand your boss's priorities, what they are responsible for. And when I say boss, that could be board. That's just whoever is senior to you, right? However you are leading up in your context. Your boss evaluates your idea through a broader organizational lens. And so you may see the immediate impact on your team of whatever a decision might be. Your boss is also considering budget constraints, competing priorities, commitments to other departments, political realities, pressure from their senior leadership. And so before bringing an issue to your boss, you want to ask, what outcome is my boss responsible for, right? So what is my boss driving toward? How does this issue affect that outcome? What consequences extend beyond my team to the greater context? What information do I have that my boss might not have? And you want to get clear on that before you walk in the room, before you have the conversation. This is where a lot of people come in with good intentions, but they lose their power, right? They lose their influence. You might explain why something matters to you, but if you don't establish why it should matter to your boss or the organization, you can't be surprised when they don't react with the same urgency that you're feeling. And so an example of this might be if you say something like, my team is overwhelmed and we really need another employee. That could be 100% true. And your boss might sympathize with that. I've had plenty of employees come to me to say that they were understaffed and they need people. And I would agree. I just couldn't do anything about it, right? And I said to them, I can think of multiple times where I said, okay, you need to document for me the work you are unable to do at your current staffing and the impact that that's having on our strategic plan, our ability to achieve the objectives and goals in our strategic plan. And so that individual went. They kept the data. God bless them. They had done the work already. And they brought me the data to demonstrate how many clients were going unserved, not just underserved, but how many clients we were turning away because they did not have the bandwidth. And they showed me how they had done everything in their power to service those clients. So it's not just that they were sitting around twiddling their thumbs. They were working beyond 40-hour weeks already to reach a point where they were still having to turn away clients. And so you want to be specific. Something like, our implementation backlog has grown to 6 weeks. That puts our 2 largest client renewals at risk. I recommend adding an implementation specialist this quarter. So you're identifying the impact of being understaffed. You're identifying the actual position that will help address that deficiency. Brilliant. Again, that doesn't mean your boss has the FTE to put toward it or the money to put toward a contractor, but the clearer that you can be in connecting your concern with your boss's priorities, the more likely you are to get leverage. And so when you do this, you are connecting your team's needs with an outcome that your boss is accountable for. And you're not doing that in a, hi, I'm making this your problem kind of a way. You don't want to do that. But you are communicating the significance of your situation in language that resonates with your boss. And you do absolutely always, every single time, want to do that. So that would be step 1. Step 2, bring a recommendation. Never, and you know this, but I'm going to say it again because we still do it. Never just drop a problem at your boss's feet. Always bring recommendations. Your boss has access to information that you don't, and that allows them to bring judgment in a way that you don't possess. And that's not your potential. That's not a limit of your ability. That is, you are sitting in a certain seat and the world looks one way to you, and they're sitting in a different seat and they've got a different perspective. That's all that means. But the inverse is also true. You have access to information that your boss doesn't have, and that gives you judgment that they don't possess. And your boss needs access to your judgment, not just the information that you've got. And so leaders sometimes will bring a problem, they'll bubble up a problem and provide all of the details, all of the information, trusting the boss's judgment to decide what should happen next. Well, 1, you are adding to your boss's cognitive load, which is never in your best interest. You want to reduce your boss's cognitive load. That is what serves you better. And 2, because your boss doesn't have your judgment, because they're not living where you live, and even if they've lived there in the past, they're not living there today, and things do change over time. And so leading up requires you to interpret the information you're communicating to your boss and form a clear, cogent point of view. And so before ever speaking to your boss, before surfacing the issue, whatever it might be, ask yourself, what do I think that we should be doing here? What is the strongest course of action? What are the different courses of action available to us, right? But what is the strongest one? What trade-offs does it create? What's the cost, long-term, short-term, where? What happens if we take no action? So if we just don't do nothing, right? And then when you do go to communicate whatever the situation is, you can state your recommendation clearly. Based on what we know now, I recommend XYZ. And if there are several viable options, present each one briefly so your boss doesn't feel like you're forcing something on them, and then identify the one that you support. You can say something like, we've got 3 workable options, blah, blah, and blah. I recommend the second because it protects our deadline, creates the least disruption to clients, whatever it might be. That recommendation gives your boss something concrete to evaluate. It also demonstrates that you're thinking beyond the boundaries of your own role, and by providing multiple options, that you're not just trying to motivate them, strong-arm them into a particular outcome that serves you best by explaining why you would pick one outcome or one option over the others. You're showing your receipts. You're showing your reasoning as to why one is better than the other. And your boss might question, and that's great. Don't ever get defensive if your boss is questioning why you recommended something. They're trying to process it themselves, and so they are going to push back and probe and ask from angles or perspectives to make sure that whatever decision they ultimately make sits right with them, right? Just because it sits right with you, it doesn't mean it's going to sit right with them. Them asking those pushback questions, that is not necessarily pushback. That is just them kind of like pulling the pieces apart. So when they say, we're going to do X, they have the confidence they need to make that call. But the bottom line is this. You want to do all of that thinking before you walk into the office and ask your boss to make the decision. And in order to do that more effectively, step 3, you want to make your thinking as easy to follow as possible. You can have a great idea. You can have a fantastic recommendation, but you can also bury it in how you present it. And this, it doesn't matter how senior you are. It doesn't matter how smart you are. Frankly, smarter people might be more prone to this. This is not a, show the boss how you built the plane situation. I have said you want to explain why you are recommending a certain thing, and you do. You want to give the reasoning and the logic, but you don't want to tell them every step of the process of how you came to the conclusion. They don't need to watch a show about knitting. They need to make a decision. And so when you are coming with a recommendation, don't over-explain. Don't give all of the history, every supporting detail, play-by-play of how you reached your conclusion. Your boss will tune out. And then you will absolutely not get the decision that you want. Again, you want to lower the cognitive load. You want to make it easier for your boss to make a decision. And so 4 things. You need to communicate 4 things in this order. 1, context. What is happening? And again, not all the details. 1 sentence. If they want to know more, they will ask you. I promise. 1 sentence. What is happening? 2, stakes. Why does it matter? Again, not just for you, but to the organization, and most importantly, to your boss. Why should they care? What's that called? The what's in it for me? The WIFM? Yeah. So 1, context. 1 sentence, what's happening. 2, stakes. 1 sentence, why does it matter to your boss and the organization. 3, recommendation. What should happen? And again, if there are multiple viable options, we could do A, B, C. I recommend A because 1 sentence. If they want more information, they will ask you. 4, decision. Boss, can you, I need you to, I am asking you to, whatever it is you need from your boss. 4 sentences. They will then come back at you, right? That is then their job. Now they are shifting into your responsibility is to communicate it clearly. Their responsibility is to probe and understand it. So that's where the questions come back and forth. And again, do not get defensive. Nobody is doubting your judgment. They're just trying to get informed. But because you presented the information concisely and clearly to begin with, you have given them the avenues to engage and ask those questions. And so here's an example. 3 regional teams are likely to miss the implementation deadline on project whatever. That delay could put $2 million in renewals at risk. I recommend moving 2 implementation specialists to those accounts for the next 6 weeks. I need your approval to adjust the assignments by Friday. 4 sentences. You gave the boss everything they need to begin a productive conversation about the issue, providing additional details when your boss asks. Bottom line, lead with the headline, the organizational consequence, your recommendation, and ask for the decision you need. Make it as easy as possible for your boss to give you the decision. So all of that speaks to when you are going to your boss with something. When leading up means, boss, I need something from you. Like, how do you get what you need from your boss? There are also plenty of times when your boss makes a decision that you think is nonsense. And that is not to knock your boss. Your boss can be phenomenal, but there are moments when we disagree with our bosses, right? Happens. Life. That is not a discredit to them. It is not a discredit to you. This is just life. People look at things differently. And so let's talk about what to do in that scenario, because it's really important when you disagree with your boss that you are able to communicate that clearly and respectfully and impactfully Doesn't mean you're going to change your boss's mind. They're going to do what they're going to do, but you can at least communicate in a way that maximizes the possibility of your being heard. Respectful disagreement is what I'm talking about here. And that means you making your professional judgment visible. You're not trying to push them or bully them. You're not going to bully your boss, but you're not trying to lean on them and show them how they're wrong. That is not an effective communication strategy. You are responsible for helping your boss succeed. And so if you disagree with a decision that they've made or the way that they are thinking about an issue prior to making a decision, think about that responsibility, your responsibility to help your boss succeed. And approach the conversation from that perspective. Keep the discussion centered on the decision, on the evidence, on the consequences, and how the road that they are going down is harmful to either them or the organization. And so here's a way to do that. I gave you the 4 things to do when you are communicating to your boss. For the ask, here's 4 things to do when you're communicating disagreement with your boss. First thing, always acknowledge the priority. If you can start the conversation from common ground, you are simply more likely to be heard. If you start the conversation by chest thumping, they're naturally going to get defensive. That's a human thing. That's not a knock on them. That is just how 99.9% of us are wired. If you happen to work for a boss who is wired differently, yay, that's amazing. Overwhelmingly, though, we're not. We're working for people who get defensive when people say we're wrong. And so you want to acknowledge the priority. Yes, X is really important. I absolutely understand why X is important, how X is important. You then want to identify the risk in terms of X, of whatever that priority is. Boss, I know that you want to go in this whatever direction it is, whatever it might be. And you think that that's gonna protect market share or help us meet our Q3 goals or whatever that priority is. But if we do this, X, Y, Z are also likely to happen. It will undermine our ability to reach the Q3 goal because in this other way that maybe they just haven't thought through yet. Again, you want to state your recommendation. Instead of this, I really think blah is the right way forward. And then you want to explain the trade-off. If we do blah instead of X, this is the value to the organization. This is how we minimize that risk that I just talked about being associated with X. And here's how it better positions us relative to the goal. And so blahs and X's, let me give you an actual example. I understand the priority is to launch the app by October. Based on current staffing and our testing schedule, I don't believe we can make that date at the quality level that we've committed to. I recommend moving the launch to November. If October remains firm, we're going to need to reduce the scope or add resources. Okay? Your boss still owns that final decision, right? You're not saying your boss was dumb for wanting October because, hello, bosses always want things fast. We always want the quick turn. I did as a VP. Any of you in director, VP, C-suite roles, you want things quickly too. You want it done well, but you want it done quickly. And so it is part of what brings us to that level is our foot is always on the gas. And so the team has to come to us to say, we're going to crash. The speed isn't safe, right? We can't deliver the results. Your responsibility when you're going to your boss to say, hey, we can't deliver the results, is simply to make sure they understand all the relevant information and the likely consequences. Your boss can still tell you to go and make October happen. And you then come back and say, okay, boss, to make October happen, this is what is required, right? This is what I need in order to give you October. And this is the other stuff that's not going to happen because I'm focused on October. You make it crystal clear for them. And if they still say October, then okay, then they've made that decision. But you presented your disagreement in a way that was not personal. It wasn't confrontational. It simply informed the decision-making by making the trade-offs and the risk and the cost crystal clear. And you can, at that point, boss says, no, I still want October after you have laid out, this is what we won't be able to do. This is the additional resources we need. You can then, yes, still October. Okay, great. What risk do you want me to monitor most closely? You're respecting the decision and you are communicating the cost. Strong leaders can disagree clearly, support the final decision, and continue protecting organizational interests. That is how you lead up. And I would encourage you in the strongest possible terms not to evaluate your success or failure in terms of leading up with whether your boss ultimately changes their mind about whatever it is you disagree with. They are going to do what they are going to do, period. They see the world differently from you because they are in a different role than you are, period. Your job is to communicate as clearly as possible. And as long as you do that respectfully, as long as you lay out all the consequences, the trade-offs, and the risks, they're going to make their decision, and then you move forward as best as you can. That is the indicator of success. Did you lay it out clearly, respectfully, not did they change their mind? Because you don't control them changing their mind. You control you and how you communicate. And so let's end here. Leading up does not require a complicated strategy. It requires you to understand the larger context, your boss's perspective. It requires you to approach leading up from a position of partnership, right? You are there to support their best performance, to set them up for success. It is not adversarial. It is not manipulative. It is you helping them succeed. And you do that by communicating clearly and concisely, providing recommendations, and adjusting, listening, updating as you get that feedback. And so before you have your next conversation with your boss, when you're going to go to them, you want to ask yourself those 4 questions. What is happening? How does it matter, or why does it matter to the organization? What do I recommend? What decision do I need from my boss, and by what timeline, right? By what date? This is how you become someone whose boss wants to hear from you when an important decision needs to be made, because you are teeing up information in a way that supports their decision making. So do it. Try it. Reach out to me. Let me know how it goes. I'm at Women Lead Well across all social platforms. I would love to hear from you. And let's start leading up well. Now, if this episode spoke to you, I would love for you to share it with a friend. We need more women leading from alignment, not adrenaline. And if you haven't already, please make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss next week's drop. It really helps my podcast find its way to other women who would enjoy it. Remember, joyful, sustainable, and authentic leadership is possible, and you deserve to enjoy every minute of it. Until next time, I'm Becky Hamm, and this is Joyfully Unstoppable.